In the journey of life, we encounter a fundamental paradox, the silent truth that both solitude and companionship hold sacred meaning. There are moments when the solitary path calls to us, offering the serenity of unburdened footsteps and the quiet clarity of personal rhythm. These are the seasons of short journeys, inward pilgrimages that require no companion but the self. And yet, when the road stretches long and uncertain, the longing for kindred presence arises, the shared breath of a companion whose purpose aligns with ours. But beneath these shifting desires lies a deeper question: who truly walks with us? It is a question that transcends mere preference. For not every companion lightens the load. Some become part of the weight. In this realization, we are reminded of a deeper, often uncomfortable truth. We are born alone, and we will pass alone. The art of being alone, of making peace with our own presence, is not a resignation, but a form of mastery. Only when we come to cherish our solitary moments can we begin to understand the sacred harmony of true companionship. To be human is to hold a rare power, the ability to simply be. While the natural world moves by instinct and impulse, we possess the conscious space between thought and action. We can choose meaning, we can cause, but in the presence of others, that pause is often lost. The collective energy stirs us to move, to act, to blend. Purpose is magnified in unity, but the crowd also carries the risk of dissolving the self. And so, to realize the fullness of our potential, we must learn to sit, not just in silence, but in presence. To reflect, to inhabit the moment, and to befriend our own essence. Even when we merge into communities, each of us remains an indivisible thread in the larger weave. We are not fragments, we are whole. Each soul is a living mosaic, formed from the patterns of memory, belief, and longing. And it is within the hush of solitude that we begin to paint with the boldest colors. Before we can know the world, we must come to know solitude, not as isolation, but as sacred stillness. In a society saturated with noise and constant connection, solitude may seem counterintuitive, even radical. But it is within that quiet space that true self-inquiry begins. Being alone is not absence. It is a conscious retreat from distraction, a return to the inner landscape where thought, feeling, and soul converge. It is within the sacred cathedral of solitude that we first glimpse the true reflection of who we are. In its quiet embrace, we discover a wisdom untouched by noise, a clarity that emerges only when the outer world falls silent. While the distractions of life blur our vision and pull us away from our essence, solitude gently removes the veil. It whispers the forgotten truths of the soul, not in thunder, but in stillness. In the crucible of solitude, we sow the seeds of self-inquiry. These seeds are delicate. They do not thrive under pressure, but grow slowly under the light of patience and the warmth of compassion. When we tend to the garden of our thoughts and nourish the roots of our emotions, we begin to form a sacred dialogue with ourselves. To be alone, then, is not to escape life, but to engage with it more deeply. It is an invitation to descend into the depths of the self and to meet the quiet miracle of our own becoming. To choose solitude is to peel away the false layers, the masks we wear to blend, to belong, to be accepted. It is a conscious return to what lies beneath, the complexity, the pain, the yearning, the truth. As we walk this inner path, we come to understand our experiences not as scattered events, but as threads in a coherent pattern. We begin to see the architecture of our inner world, the blueprints drawn from childhood beliefs, unhealed wounds, buried dreams. In this sacred act of self-reflection, clarity begins to rise, like a still lake, reflecting the brilliant constellations above. We see the patterns that shape our actions, the roots of our fears, the fire behind our desires. This is not passive awareness. It is active revelation. We do not merely observe, we awaken. And in awakening, we come to realize that we are both the sculptor and the stone, the architect and the unfolding form. True transformation begins here, in this patient unfolding, this gentle tending of the inner terrain. We pull the weeds of doubt, water the flowers of self-love, and nourish the soil with forgiveness. Each solitary moment becomes a note in the great symphony of self-evolution. Like a butterfly emerging from the cocoon, we release the weight of old narratives and stretch our wings toward new and unknown horizons. In a world addicted to speed and stimulation, solitude can feel unfamiliar, even frightening. The constant pull of screens, sounds, and surface conversations can seem safer than the raw honesty of being alone with our thoughts. But what if comfort could be found not in noise, but in stillness? What if presence, deep, unfiltered presence, lives not out there, but here, within, in the breath between distractions, in the sacred pause between what was and what is becoming? To be alone is an act of courage. It requires us to face ourselves without the armor of identity, without the masks that society rewards, without the safety of external validation. It asks us to sit with the rawness of our unfiltered being, the wounds we carry, the strengths we've forgotten, the dreams we buried, and the fears that have silently shaped our choices. In this sacred stillness, we don't find emptiness. We uncover dormant wisdom, the wisdom that reminds us true growth begins not in perfection, but in the radical acceptance of our imperfections. There is a quiet beauty in self-becoming, not as a finished masterpiece, but as a living sculpture, ever evolving. We are not here to chase perfection. We are here to nurture the divine spark within, the luminous thread buried beneath layers of conditioning and expectation. This spark holds the key to our authentic expression. It is the compass that remembers who we are, even when the world tries to make us forget. And so, solitude becomes a profound act of self-love. It is not loneliness. It is a sacred meeting with the self. In these silent hours, we become our own companion, our own witness, our own quiet cheerleader. We learn to be gentle with ourselves, to forgive the missteps, to honor the small victories, to speak kindly in the face of inner doubt. We find the bravery to look into our own shadows, those silent saboteurs that hide as insecurity, fear, or hesitation. And when we bring light to these shadows, we see them for what they truly are, illusions that dissolve beneath the gaze of conscious awareness. In embracing solitude, we also uncover connection, not just to ourselves, but to the greater whole. Personal growth is not an isolated path. As we heal and rise, we ripple that energy into the collective. One soul aligned in truth becomes a quiet revolution, an invitation for others to remember their own light. In a world drowning in noise, stillness becomes a sacred threshold, a doorway to universal harmony. In that stillness, we hear the heartbeat of the earth, the song of our spirit, and the rhythms that weave all things into oneness. It is here, in the quiet space where breath meets intention, that imagination awakens. We begin to dream again, not dreams imposed by the world, but dreams born from soul longing. This is the sacred space of creation. In it, we discover we are not only the canvas, but also the artist. With every thought we nurture and every belief we reclaim, we paint the contours of our becoming. And as we deepen our intimacy with the self, we transform the way we connect with others. Our relationships shift, no longer bound by approval or projection, but anchored in awareness, empathy, and the quiet dignity of mutual respect. At first glance, the idea of being alone may seem at odds with the human longing for meaningful relationships. After all, connection is woven into the fabric of our humanity. But it is precisely through the practice of solitude that the path to authentic relationships is revealed. In learning to sit with ourselves, we begin to cultivate emotional intelligence, the quiet wisdom that allows us to recognize, hold, and respond to our own feelings and those of others with clarity and compassion. Emotional intelligence becomes the bridge between solitude and connection. It enables us to communicate our needs, not through demand or fear, but with sincerity and presence. As we grow in awareness of our own emotional landscapes, we become better equipped to honor the emotional truth of another. This vulnerability births trust, and trust becomes the soil where genuine connection can take root. Moments of solitude, then, are not empty pauses. They are sacred intervals that enrich our capacity to relate. In these spaces, we discern which relationships nourish our soul and reflect our evolving truth. Solitude grants us the clarity to see when a connection uplifts and when it quietly depletes. And in that clarity, we are empowered to choose wisely, not from fear of being alone, but from reverence for who we are becoming. To be alone is not to be isolated. It is a conscious return to the self, a pilgrimage inward where we shed external roles and expectations to meet the essence of who we truly are. It is here we nurture self-love, embrace individuality, and widen the circle of compassion, not just inward, but outward. In doing so, we become a quiet beacon, radiating presence that awakens growth in others simply by our example. So let us reframe solitude, not as separation, but as sacred preparation. For only by knowing ourselves can we truly know another. In solitude, we unlock the door to empathy, to real intimacy, to the web of life that binds us all. If this message resonated with your heart, I invite you to like and subscribe to Spiritual Flow. Share this video with those dear to you who may find meaning in its message, and leave a comment below. Your reflections are a part of this collective journey. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for walking this path with me. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open,